A few months ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Shasta Erickson, a naturopathic doctor and a friend of Tom Quinn's. Tom hosts the podcast radio show on KSCO in California. Tom is a fierce anti-vaxxer, as is Shasta. After I had talked with Shasta for a while, I sent her a ton of information on my research. She was so impressed that she sent transcripts to Drs. Cowan, Kaufman, Bailey, and others, asking them to do an interview with me. Then my friend Craig Wyatt from Arizona called me and said I should highlight my research and put it in a format. I told Greg that it was highlighted. I told him that the fraud was so complicated and started back in the 1700s, up to the 1950s with polio, and continues up to today. Then I thought about it. Yeah, I could highlight the highlighted book. So thanks to Craig, I've made this video. So the other day I watched a video by Dr. Sam Bailey. She started out with some history of the Rockefellers. She mentioned Simon Flexner's sick experiment and mentioned Tom Rivers. So far, so good. But then she takes the route down DDT being the cause of polio. I guess she either believes that or understands that many people just want short answers, one-line answers. Too many people in this movement are just too lazy to do any serious research. They don't want to tax their brain. Well, anyway, I just made a comment on the video. I said if they stopped using DDT in 1977, why do we still have polio today? So I got to work. I've cut down my research to a shorter version, but still maintain the most important stuff. Now let me make one thing clear. I have no letters after my name. I'm just an ordinary guy who has spent an extraordinary amount of time and money to find the truth about vaccines, viruses, polio, and smallpox. And after 50 years, I have found it. Well, maybe a little under ordinary, as I did not finish high school. In fact, I made D's and F's from the 9th grade to the 11th grade. You know, in looking back, I'm so glad that I quit school. I didn't listen to them or anybody else, and that kept my brain free from being indoctrinated. It also left me free to question everything and everyone, starting with the medical profession back in 1970, when I took my daughter to when she was vaccine damaged. But it didn't take me long to figure out that they have no clue about health or what to do about disease. I put a book together back in 2005. I called it The Virus That Never Was. It was a result of the last 30 years of research. As I bought more books over the years, I revised it 5 different times. My wife used to tell me when I had finished the revised book and I said, now I'm through, she'd say, Jim, you'll never be through. Well, I wish she was here now because finally, after 25 years, my book is complete. I call it A Conspiracy Accomplished. So, I put together a short transcript. I have written it down. I will read it so I don't mess it up. This is a massive fraud that begins in the 1700s and continues in the 1950s with polio and ends up today with COVID-19. So let's start at the very beginning. In the 1700s, they practiced inoculation in England. That was taking the pus from a person with smallpox and engrafting it into the skin of a healthy person. Then the good doctor or the old woman would claim the person would be protected for life. England outlawed inoculation in 1840 because it caused so much disease, disability, and death. The pus was called virus. Then in 1796, Edward Jenner took the pus of a victim with smallpox, engrafted it into the belly of a cow. Jenner then took the cow pus and engrafted it into a young boy and claimed that he was protected from smallpox for life. And that pus was called virus. The word vacca is from the Latin and means cow, thus vaccination. The word virus is also from the Latin and means poison, like in snake venom. Now let me quote from my book written by the American Medical Association in 1928. The book is called Hygiea, the Health Magazine. Latin is a valuable language from which to select basic elements for scientific words because it is a dead language. For this reason, the basic meanings of Latin words are fixed forever. There are no living tongues to alter those meanings or vary them in any way. Anyone who uses Latin in any but the established manner is guilty of an error. Now, my 1957 Webster's Encyclopedic Dictionary of the English Language gives the definition of virus. Venom, a poison that is produced in the body by a disease. So what poison is produced in the body by every disease? It's the infection, or pus, or inflammation. It was Jenner's pus. This infection, inflammation, or pus did not cause itself. The disease was the cause of the inflammation, pus, or infection. So, in 1897, a Dutch microbiologist named Martinus Beijerinck wanted to find the bacteria that he thought caused the disease of the tobacco leaves. He ground up the disease leaves, poured them through a filter, thinking the filter would trap the bacteria. He found no bacteria. Then he did a strange thing. He injected the ground up sap into the veins of growing young plants. Now it really gets crazy. Beijerinck said that there was something in the sap that he couldn't see that came alive and attacked the plants. He called it a virus. He wasn't a bad guy, just stupid. He didn't understand that by injecting the young growing plants that he had poisoned them. So now let's move up to 1909 with Simon Flexner, who was in charge of the Rockefeller Institute of Medicine. Flexner took Beijerinck's experiment to a whole new level. Flexner was given the credit for transferring polio from a human being to a monkey. Here is what he did. Flexner took a child who supposedly died of polio. He cut out the spinal cord, ground it up into a sap, cut a hole in the head of a monkey, injected the ground up spinal cord into the monkey's brain, creating artificial disease. Flexner wasn't the first sick son of a bitch to do this. Before this were a couple of characters named Landsteiner and Popper who did it first. Now let's move up to 1951. February the 27th, 1950. Hilary Kaprowski fed the first so-called live virus to a human being. The virus he fed them was ground up rat brain dipped in chocolate. Is your stomach turning yet? I'm just going to name a few more players in this sick science. 1933, Louis Gebhardt. Quote, the source of virus was a suspension of ground up spinal cord and brain from monkeys. Source of virus. 1936, Thomas Francis Jr. The virus is ground up mouse lung. A little known fact, Jonas Salk and Thomas Rivers put Tommy Francis in charge of the Salk vaccine field trial in 1954. Francis taught Salk how to make vaccines during World War II. It was all cut and dried. 1939. Dr. Charles Armstrong of the U.S. Public Health Service gave white mice polio. The virus he used came from the ground-up brain and spinal cord of a young man who had supposedly died of polio. 1941, Howard Howe, MD, and David Bodian, MD, quote, the virus was human stools. 1954, John Enders, quote, the source of the virus was ground-up mouse brain. Now you know where the idea of the dead coming to life originated. This is Frankenstein science. Also, Rivers chaired the virus committee of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis from 1938 to 1955, which was changed to the March of Dimes. Rivers left when the Great Salk Vaccine Massacre took place in 1955, where 260 kids got polio from the vaccine and 11 died. That was reported. We will never know the real number. This is the so-called Cutter incident. A lot of misinformation about this. Louis Gebhardt, professor of University of Utah, said he saw a living virus in the Cutter vaccine and he injected the poison into a monkey and the monkey died. Guess what? Gebhardt worked with Salk. They were buddies in the plan to miseducate the entire medical profession. And Cutter was the only company that was not connected with the Rockefellers. So for them to create artificial disease in animals, they inject poison by chemicals and radiation into an animal, make it sick, kill the animal, check the organs and cells for damage, and claim the damage was caused by a virus. Very clever. They mean, of course, the original definition of virus, which is poison. In fact, Google Brazil snake farm. You will find they've been using snake venom in vaccines since the early 1900s. Now, if you're paying attention, you should have noticed one thing all these 6 scientists had in common. They were all using the result or product of disease for their vaccine. Their virus, poison, was infected tobacco leaves, ground up mouse brain, ground up rat brain, ground up mouse lung, rat brain, and human stools, and the ground up spinal cord from a dead child. They used the product of disease and claimed it would prevent disease. This insane idea of using the product of disease to make vaccines had a name. It was called isopathy. Isopathy was defined as the product of disease will prevent disease. This belongs to Dr. Joseph Lux, a doctor who actually taught isopathy in medical schools, and he coined this in 1823 in honor of Edward Jenner, who practiced isopathy and died in 1823. Jenner, you recall, used the product of disease, the pus of smallpox. They all followed Dr. Lux's isopathy nonsense. Bejanek, Leinsteiner, Flexner, Rivers, Enders, Kaprowski, Francis. They followed Jenner like the lemmings that followed each other and fell off the cliff, except for Thomas Rivers. He followed Bejanek's stupidity and called Bejanek the father of virology. Rivers was no dummy. He saw where the money was to be made, along with the fame. And that, my friend, is just a small part of the goal to miseducate the entire medical profession that they knew would miseducate the entire world, and they have accomplished that beyond their wildest dreams. You know, I want to mention something to you. In the years I was figuring all this stuff out, like a puzzle, putting a puzzle together, piece at a time, from year to year to year. I got so angry, I couldn't think of any words to describe these people. The only thing that came to my mind and still comes to mind is they were sick mother effers. That's all I can say about these people. I have said for years that the medical profession was founded in ignorance, deception, and lies, and remains there today. You may be thinking, how do I know all this? Because I've spent 50 years on research and thousands of dollars on books and transcripts that the media didn't bother to report. Now, you can go to my website to learn more or get a copy of my book or both, which explains the entire medical fraud from A to Z. It's www.shotsoftruth.com. This is Jim Dandy O'Kelly saying that you can't fail if you don't quit. And we won't lose if everybody gets involved. Educate yourself first in the virus fraud with the facts, the real facts, and then you'll be ready to educate the world. I will talk to you later. This is a 14-minute video. I hope you'll watch it.